today we have David, who will be talking about his generation. Sounds a bit like that Who song, doesn't it?
Well, I think
David.
thank you, Ray. Thank you, everybody. I think I'm going to change the title, and I'll explain why, to Solar on 10 million homes. So solar for 10 million homes. And I want to get to the point where that doesn't sound too outrageous, but the original title, talking about my generation, was just a wordplay, right? My friend Iris wanted to call our project Revolt, to show that we're going against the system. But she rapidly realized that there was a reasonably good chance that people would, just a moment, that people would say our project was revolting. And so maybe we shouldn't do that. And then I just had this, so what would be fun? What would be a bit of an anthem that connects the idea of solar roofs, or and we're generating energy. And I just had this sort of flash talking about my generation, and so we'll see. We'll see if that ever appears on a poster for a community energy campaign. But I would like to have this be fairly interactive, partly because I haven't got great notes because things are changing rapidly. But yesterday, or was it the day before? I think it was the day before. Well, this week on Monday, there was a community energy conference in Sheffield. And we made some interesting advances on our project. But on Wednesday, we finally got to the point that we've been working to for a little while. And we had a meeting with Energy Minister Michael Shanks. So that's it sort of represents a sort of quite high level of it's a milestone. It's a big milestone for our project, and I'd like to get to the point where we have some sense of why it made sense to talk to Michael Shanks and why he was interested and why that meeting was and is important for our project. But just to sort of start off, you've all heard me bang on about community energy quite regularly as a project moved from, very early ideas. Although I started working on solar energy in Bristol in before 2011. The government came out with feed-in tariff subsidies in 2011. And that year I worked with, I pulled my hair out because I knew nothing about solar energy and community energy. And yet I knew that there was a subsidy and I thought it might be useful. So I, had to find out, how much energy do you get from a solar panel? And what can you sell it for? Or how do you get the subsidies for it? And where would we get funding to put solar panels on? Could we get it from a bank and so on? It was a really interesting and complicated learning. And there was a day at the end of the year when the subsidies were going to drop quite substantially. So it was from 40 pence a unit for solar on your roof to something like 26. So the money was going to drop by a third. And that affected the amount of money that we would earn over the lifetime of the project. And so affected the return on our investors. So we were really struggling to get things ready for that. But there came a time when six of us were sitting around a table, uh, all with some different understanding of the project. And everybody knew that there was a problem that meant the project was going to be really difficult to do and probably couldn't go ahead. But it wasn't their problem. Their bit was all right. But the other person had a problem. And so he went round the table and everybody put their hand up and said, we all agreed that, if we all said yes, then the project can go ahead. And everybody said yes, and the project can go ahead. So I was like, I called up the installer and I said, look, we haven't quite actually firmed up the money. And he said, well, if the worst came to the worst, I'll put the solar on the roof and I'll get the feed-in tariff. And he says, anyway, my wife's on the roof measuring up right now. so it was going ahead. And that was, a milestone. It took time to get to that milestone, but we got there. And, right at the last minute, we got the solar panels in place. And the next year we went straight in. Yeah, Hattie, you've got a question. You're muted, so you'll need to unmute yourself before you speak.
Where were those solar panels then?
Yeah, on the roof of Hamilton House in Stokes Croft.
Oh, Hamilton House. Oh, yeah. Wow. I got them up in time.
Yeah, I knew the owner well at the time. He died in 2018, unfortunately. Just super guy, Martin Connolly. And at the time, that 40 kilowatts of solar that we got on the roof was the first community-owned solar in Bristol, and it was owned equally between Bristol Power Co-op and Bristol Power, and it was a CIC at the time, and the newly formed Bristol Energy Co-op. We owned it jointly, and it was bigger than the solar panel that Mayor George Ferguson had on the roof of the tobacco factory. So we trumped George Ferguson. So it was fun. There were all sorts of fun elements in it. And we were thinking, we've done this. But my face was a little bit glum because there are about 10 things that I wanted to accomplish with the project. And we only accomplished 3 or 4 of them. And everybody said, "That's fantastic what you've done." And I was crying about the things that we hadn't accomplished. But those remained an agenda. And the next year, we wanted to see what you could do to help ordinary people. And this definitely feeds into the story it's part of the story. And the feed-in tariff applied to ordinary houses. And there was a mechanism that allowed somebody to put solar on a roof and lease the roof from the owner of the house and put the solar on it. So they owned the solar panels and they then had the right to the subsidy, and the people in the house would get free electricity. And that year you could walk around Bristol and you could see adverts from British Gas talking about free solar energy on your roof. And we definitely had that idea. We knew that it wouldn't last forever because the subsidies wouldn't last forever. But if we did this, if we went in, talked to the community, we would learn a thing or two. We didn't know what we'd learn, but we knew we'd learn something. And we approached, this was the formative Bristol Power Co-op, we approached Lockleys Neighbourhood Trust, who were, the government liked them at the time. David Cameron's localism project had picked a few communities to be big local communities. And that meant they were getting extra attention and help from the government. And Bristol City Council was looking at them. So it seemed like a good, if we do a project in Lockleys, we'll be under the eyes of the government as well. And there was communities minister, I'm trying to remember his name. Anyway, we went and talked to Lockleys Neighbourhood Trust, and they said, "Oh, there's a community newsletter called Lockleys Unlocked." And I wrote a massively technical email about what we wanted to do. And a lovely lady we were working with, who was a journalist, turned it into half a dozen paragraphs, which nice and simple. And that's an important lesson too, is using people who are good communicators. You can be the nerd. You probably need a nerd to make your project work, but it's good to have good communicators. And we put a notice out in Lockleys Unlocked, and people came to meetings, tea and cakes, and we tried to explain what it was we wanted to do. We want your roof. We want to put solar on your roof. It's not going to cost you anything. We'll find the money for that, and you'll get free electricity. And it was quite interesting because the people in Lockleys weren't immediately arms open welcoming. The response was more like, "What are you doing here? Nobody ever does anything for us," and there's quite a lot of resentment and anger. And of course, not a lot of technical people in Lockleys. It's a former council estate. From our point of view, it's beautiful. Lots of big houses with big roofs. And he said, we want to run it. We want to run this experiment. What's in it for you? Well, I want to run this experiment. I need your roof. I don't need the money. We're getting the money from a community share issue, and we'll pay for it with the government grant. All right. And people signed up. And we had organised a cooperative of installers, and called Bristol Area Solar Installer Co-op, BASIC. And 5 or 6 different installers put solar on 13 homes in Lockleys that year. And then the installers sort of said, are you ever going to pay us for the solar? And we said, oh yeah, that's the bit we forgot. In our rush to have the meetings, we'd organised people, got the solar on the roofs. We'd told the installers, well, we will pay you, or you can get the money, the feed-in tariff. And at the end of the year, we ran a share issue, and we raised rather more money than we needed to pay the installers. So the next year we put solar on 10 more roofs. We had solar on 23 roofs in Lockleys, and by and large, people were happy with the solar. In fact, when we had follow-up meetings, somebody came along and said, yeah, well, when you said you were going to put solar on our roofs for free, I thought, maybe next year or the year after. But, 2 weeks later, I got solar on my roof and my energy bill was going down. And we have the co-op, there was this lovely man, super guy, who said, there's a light on my meter that shows when the roof's generating energy, and I'm not paying an electricity bill. Sometimes I just sit and look at the light. So lovely. So, so we had an impact and we had a learning, and we knew that the feed-in tariffs would get less and less, and they wouldn't be enough to pay for solar roofs. So we tried to expand, but sort of fell flat on our faces, bloodied our noses a bit even. But then there came a time, what was happening was the cost of the solar panels was coming down, and it was coming down. And it became clear, a lady called Mary Gilly, an engineer called Mary Gilly, figured out how you could share renewable energy with people in a neighborhood and collect money for it. And she did this deal with Co-op Energy, where they had energy from a National Trust hydro scheme, and they shared it with 100 residents in a town called Bethesda, somewhere in North Wales. And it was called Energy Local. And they were using half-hourly metering because the hydro scheme wasn't always working. So in any given half hour, they would measure how much energy the hydro scheme was generating, and they would share it between those 100 people, depending on how much energy they were using at the time. If they weren't using energy, they couldn't get a share. And how that share worked was figured out by the energy company's billing computer, right? They figured it out. So it was really cool. It was quite a technical innovation. And I thought of Mary Gilly as kind of the chosen one. You know, she had figured out how communities could get energy from one place to another. And there was a trick behind it. Normally, if you generate energy in one place, you can only sell it to an energy company, and you'll sell it to them at a wholesale price. You will get what's called a power purchase agreement, and they'll buy it off you at wholesale price. And if you're in the community buying it, you're going to buy it at retail price. And that can be 2 or 3 times as much. It's a big difference from 6 pence to 16 pence it used to be, and now 25 pence, say. So you lose a lot and you don't gain a lot. But what Mary Gilly had figured out was that if you've got a business in an area or an organization, you can get a single aggregated bill for all your energy. I would say for all your energy use, but there's the trick, right? So it could be that at one end of the town, you've got a business that's generating energy for whatever reason. You know, it's got diesel generators or whatever. And in another area of the town, you've got maybe some little shops. And you don't want all your shop managers to have to pay the energy bill. So you want an aggregated bill. And the energy companies basically say, yeah, of course, that makes sense. No problem at all. We'll put it all on one bill. We'll add up all the usage and you just pay the total. Great. But what if somewhere it isn't usage, it's generation? So you're adding up the usage and taking off the generation. And in case you hadn't noticed, what you've just done is you've shifted the generation to where it's being used without paying any transmission charges. And there's a lovely guy, Patrick Alcorn, really, really smart, super guy, who was community energy manager at Bayes, who came to a community energy conference. And he basically stood up and said, we have noticed that some energy groups are working to have all their generation treated as behind the meter. If you've got solar on your roof and you use it, it's behind the meter. The energy company never see it. They don't get any money from you. So with this local netting, they're working to have all their energy use treated as behind the meter. We will act to prevent this. Lovely. So it's sort of cat and mouse game. But what we were doing, we said, well, hang on a tick. That's all very well. You might say that, and it might sound reasonable. But our energy bills are split into 2. And half your energy bill is for the electricity you use, and it's supposed to be at fair rates. And the other half is for access to the network. That's called the standing charge. And in the local area, we're just using the local network, this side of our substation. We're not using the national grid. We think it is fair that we should get energy at a discount. And what's happened is over years and years and years, Mary Gilly has worked steadfastly with an expert energy group on getting a special piece of regulation created, a dispensation written into the regulations to allow local netting, as it's called, because you're netting the energy use, net use. You know, total consumed less total generated. And last Friday, the consultation closed on a regulatory change called P441. And it's quite complicated. And my group definitely, we desperately wanted this. We need this to be able to have solar on people's roofs shared with people in the community. We want to be, we don't, a fair scheme would say not just people who have solar on their roofs get the energy, but we want to share it with everyone fairly. So we want, with the energy company, figuring out what's fair, sharing it all around. So we wanted that capability. And Mary Gill has been working on it. The consultation closed on Friday. So this talk is very, very timely. There's really interesting things going on. The consultation closed with a team of experts unanimously recommending that it be adopted. And my group we wanted to put in a response, but the questionnaire was really technical and very complicated. But it turned out, so I wrote an essay about what we wanted in simple words, and I fed it into ChatGPT along with the consultation document and the questionnaire. And it produced a beautiful reply. And I will link to in the description, if we record this and put it up, I will link to our submission, P441, because it's germane to what my project is about. And I've gone into some detail, but in my earlier Quaker talk was one called Snakes and Ladders, Energy Snakes and Ladders. And that really is one of that's a hard ladder. Without that ladder in place, it's a long journey. Our project could just organize to put solar on people's roofs and using an energy company's partnership, or separately, we could bill people. We could say, you're going to get cheaper energy and we'll bill you for the solar off your roof. And we could either bill you separately or it could be included in your energy bill. Both of those possibilities are there. Other possibilities too. But it would be much nicer if we could do something more equitable. So far, so yeah, Patsy.
I'm trying to work this out. You've got somebody here who's not awfully technical. So I'm imagining all these roofs with solar panels, okay? And say I've got this panel on my roof. How? I mean, mechanically, how is that energy from getting on my roof? How is that coming down into my home or being shared onto like the national grid?
Yeah, that's lovely. We're going to make it simple for people. So there's two things. There's a sort of technical deal, which is a little bit complicated, but there should be a simple deal for ordinary people. We want to make it so that you come for tea and biscuits again, just like we did in Lockleys. And this year's version goes, would you like some of your energy to be cheaper? We think if you sign up, we think for the average home, we should be able to save about 30% of your energy bill. And that might be about £500 a year.
David,
Patty,
answer her question. She's just asked you such a simple question. How does the energy get from the roof to you?
Right. And okay. And so the next sentence goes, we're going to put solar panels on your roof. Who's we? We is a community co-op that you become a member of. So you join a co-op and we, the co-op of which you are a member, are going to put solar panels on your roof for free. And they're going to get in your home the only way that electricity comes in, through a wire, right? We're going to put a wire in. Where's the wire going to go? It's going to go to your meter cupboard. There will be an extra meter put in. Turns out you have to have a generation meter. And you will need to have your main electricity meter will need to be a smart meter. The generation meter will also be a smart meter. So the energy company, so both us, the co-op that you've joined, and the energy company can See how much, well, the solar that's on your roof, you will automatically use it as it's being generated, right? If you're using energy, then the solar energy coming from your roof, you'll use it. If you don't use it all, then some of it will go out. And the generation meter will be able to tell, oh, they didn't use all the energy. Some of it is exported. If you'd put the solar on your roof, you'd have a deal with this electricity company to pay you for that export energy. But you would just, the solar that you use, you'd just get that for free, naturally, right? Hattie, you're muted.
Yeah, I waited for the sun to start generating energy on my solar panels this morning before putting the laundry on.
Lovely. So there you go. If you were a member of an energy co-op that was doing netting, so the second thing is we're not just putting solar on people's roofs. When we were doing it in Lockleys, we couldn't put batteries in. As it turned out, if you put in a battery, the cost of the battery made the electricity end up costing as much as mains electricity anyway. Now, the cost of the battery, the cost of the solar's come down, the cost of the batteries coming down, has come down, and is going to go down further. Cost of batteries is going to halve at least in the next couple of years. And so we can afford to put solar in people's houses who are working during the day and wouldn't get to use their solar because it will go in the battery and it will be used when they come in the evening. So we're going to do work, either put smart boxes in or have smart controls or have the energy company do something clever to make sure that you are getting to use as much of the solar energy that we generate on your roof as you can. But we're going to deliberately put as much solar on your roof as possible, possibly more than you could possibly use, because we want to share that energy around. We want to share it with people who haven't got room for solar on their roofs. So 2 years ago, we set out to figure out if all this was possible. In fact, 5 years ago, we did for a project called Lockleys Loves Solar. And we were working at that time with an energy company called Bristol Energy Company. And we had it all worked out. The savings weren't that great because solar panels were expensive, storage was expensive, and electricity was cheap in the good old days. But since then, the cost of solar's come down, the cost of solar panels come down, and the cost of ordinary electricity has gone up. So the savings are better. Angela, I see your finger in the air.
Who manufactures solar panels? Is it Americans? If it is, I wouldn't have anything to do with it, okay? Who manufactures them? Is it a British company, a Swedish company, or?
Well, of course, everyone has a choice. And
no, who manufactures? Who is the main?
Everybody manufactures solar panels.
I don't manufacture many of them.
Okay.
You have to define it more clearly than that, David.
Sorry. Solar panels are manufactured all around the world. Principally, the largest manufacturer, but by no means the only manufacturer of solar panels, is China. It's the largest manufacturer. And of course, there is a whole range. There are concerns about the manufacture of solar panels. But as with the burning of petrol and the use of magnets in cars, if you, when you buy a car, you're buying, for years after, you're buying massive amounts of petrol that's burned. Whereas if you buy a car with an electric motor in it, there's nothing much as less. There's about, it's about the same amount of damage as having a petrol motor in it, but the petrol motor is going to keep using energy forever. And similarly with solar panels, the solar panels on your roof might weigh about 60 kilograms. During their lifetime, they will save as much they will replace as much fossil energy as if your entire house was manufactured out of coal. 60 tons, right? So 60 kilograms of solar panel saves 60 tons of pollution in the atmosphere. The difference is dramatic. And yes, of course, you can get solar panels that are manufactured more ethically than others. And yes, of course, solar panels are highly recyclable because they're glass panels in aluminium frames. Both glass and aluminium are very common, but glass and aluminium are also extremely recyclable. So by and large, what we are suggesting is going to, first of all, it depends which lenses you've got on. If you're an environmentalist, you'll be pleased that there aren't going to be emissions. You'll be pleased that you're putting materials on the roof. I mean, if you take tiles off a roof, they're only ever going to go to landfill. You can't really use them again. Much less than the weight of tiles on your roof would be solar panels, which can be almost 100% recycled. So and we're starting to be able to make the roof be the panel, not you've got a roof that you put the panels on. So all sorts of wonderful things going on. One of the things that's going on is because I'm using my phone for the internet, I don't know what the time is. What is the time right now? How long have we got?
It's 11:35.
Okay, and we're lovely, and we're into Q&A anyway. But I'd just like to mention that so we're getting to the point where we have a government now that has an ambition to have lots of energy. It's set up a company called Great British Energy. It's got something like 50 billion in funding. It's got a lot of money. It's been set up with a headquarters in Aberdeen, which is the British centre for setting up wind energy on the North Sea and around the country. That's a big deal. But solar energy, there are definite ambitions. I think Ed Miliband, they haven't come out with their local energy plan just yet, but Ed Miliband, the Minister for the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, has commissioned a solar roadmap. And the solar roadmap wants us to go from about, I think it's 18 gigawatts of solar that we've already got on roofs and solar farms, something like that, to more like 45 to 47 gigawatts of solar. It's a big leap. And he talks in that solar roadmap about having enough solar energy to power 10 million homes, starting with about 1 million at the moment. And locally, wonderful regional mayor, Helen Godwin, has commissioned a local strategic plan, and that talks about having 150 megawatts of renewable energy, which is not quite saying it could be wind, not just solar, by 2035. So she's talking about 2035, not 2030, and 150 megawatts, not 45 gigawatts. How does it stack up? Well, the answer is it's a little bit shy on the ambitions. But I've already talked to her, and she came back from a meeting with Ed Miliband and called me in and said, we want to do more. I want to put you with our net zero manager, who I'm meeting this afternoon, and to talk about what more we can do in Bristol. And I had I went to the Labour Party conference and met the Energy Minister, who's sort of within Ed Miliband's ministry, but Energy Minister is Michael Shanks. I met him at the Labour Party conference and had a few words after he'd spoken. He said, that sounds interesting. I'd like to know more. And I sent him a little briefing paper, which I will also link to in the notes, and an email. And he said, yeah, let's set up a meeting, which happened 2 days ago. And I didn't explain all of this. Well, we've already used up more time than we had. I said, you're after putting solar on, enough solar for 10 million homes. So I've got an idea. Why not put it on 10 million homes? And the answer is, there are regulatory difficulties, but they're being addressed right now. My group thinks that we have got a route through this, and we're already talking with a big energy company about handling the billing and doing work to optimize the performance of solar working with storage together, so that in each local substation area, you could have a local microgrid, it's called, meaning of a club of all the solar and all the storage in that substation area being run to provide energy at best price for everyone. And he said, well, that's really interesting. And it immediately cottoned on that if this was done within substation areas, you would not need to reinforce the grid so much to carry generation in from outside substation areas. And he said, we should get NESO to commission some work. NESO is the National Energy System Operator, which was set up by this incoming government, so that even though it doesn't own the grid, it is now in charge of setting a strategy for the grid. And Great British Energy has been given instructions, a strategy paper from Ed Miliband, which is, this is what you're to deliver. And now we've edged our way up to the table. And there's a lot of talk about community energy and a local energy plan. And the local energy plan isn't ready yet. And it seemed that from our talk with Michael Shanks that there's room for input from communities, and that our meeting here is timely. So there you go. Brings you bang up to date.
Right, David, how do you stop the big energy companies from monstering you out of community energy?
Ray, let me switch that question round. How do you imagine they can stop us? If we own, so at the very least, communities could, so there are lots of groups doing things like this. People say, oh, there's a group, I know a group that's doing exactly what you're doing. And when you find out what they are doing, it isn't. They've got grant money, or they're putting they're organizing people who own their houses to put solar on their roofs, and they're organizing finance for it. We're talking about people who don't own their house, people who can't sign a consumer credit agreement, but people who have the right to an energy bill. Everybody's got a right to energy. And we say, well, take your energy bill and use that through your energy supplier to raise the money to put solar on your roof. And because we can do that, that the big energy companies, we've just excluded them from the loop. If we're generating as much of our energy as possible in our local substation areas, there isn't room for a giant energy company to say, hang on, I want to sell you fossil fuels for much more money. And you say, well, dream on, sunshine, right? They might have buckets of it at petrol stations, but you say, well, I've got an electric car, chum. And in my car club, we're charging our electric cars with energy we create on our roofs, with solar that we own, paid for by money that we borrowed at low interest. So the point, it's like there was a time when IBM said, we're going to be able to make computers the size of an attaché case, incredible, really miniaturize it. The problem is we charge about $250,000 for a computer. We're not sure how we'll get people to pay $250,000, right? And that was in IBM's headquarters in New York, Armonk. And meanwhile, there are two guys called Steve in a garage in Cupertino saying, Steve, it's going to be possible to build a computer smaller than an attaché case, and we'll be able to, people will pay $600 for it, right?
Mm.
And that's what happened. And IBM, at the time that IBM introduced the IBM PC, so they did make a computer, they couldn't sell it for $250,000. And they recorded the biggest corporate loss in history up to that date because the price of computers crashed. And that's what's going to happen with big energy companies. And it's what Mark Carney warned about. He says, you're not going to be able to sell all that oil that you've got in the ground. Yeah, okay. Mark Carney said, all you big energy companies, you're saying that you're worth trillions because you own massive reserves under the ground. You've got enough reserves that if you burned it all, we'd guarantee 10 degrees of global warming. That mustn't happen. But it's all right because it won't happen because people are going to find renewable energies cheaper than fossil energy. And people will stop buying fossil energy, and the reserves will stay in the ground. And what that means is that there will be a crash in the value of fossil energy companies, and that will impact stock exchanges. But hopefully, Patsy, even though you got the snuffles, you'll be sitting at home in a nice warm home. And by the way, in winter, even when the sun's not shining, you maybe have batteries with your solar, and you'll be charging those batteries using night-rate electricity and running cheap, efficient heating from using those batteries and cheap electricity. So there's all sorts of good stuff coming in the next few years, and we've just reached a milestone where the government are, oh right, so we could put solar on 10 million roofs. So there you go.
It sounds so exciting. I just hope I'm going to be alive long enough.
Oh, you and me both, Patsy.
I was talking about the other day when I accidentally thought you were another Ray.
I'll just tell them. Me physiatrist is here, so I'm going to have to leave you now, folks.
Okay, well, you could leave it on and mute or whatever.
I shall mute you.
There you go. Good. Okay. Right. You're going to have to cut me off when my time's done because I can't see a clock. Hattie.
Okay, so I have got solar panels and I have got a battery. May I join in this idea of charging my batteries overnight with a night rate electricity? If so, how?
We don't know yet. The answer is maybe because how the battery is connected into your system, how the battery is controlled is sort of up for grabs, including the question, do you get night rate electricity? Have you already got a white meter?
No.
Right. So all of these things are, to be learned, and the answer is, at some point, yes. Why not? Because if you've got the solar panels already, and you've got batteries already, it may be a question of, clipping a black box onto your system with a controller. So the answer is all things are possible, but they become more possible as the cost comes down and as you make these little items of consumer electronics, solar panels and batteries available to people, and allow them to be hooked up in intelligent ways.
Thank you.
I've got a question.
Marion.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Yeah. A lot of these things, sort of exciting things that are kind of the moment, whether it's phones or electric car batteries or whatever, they use a lot of sort of rare earths that are only available in certain countries, particularly Africa. And they seem to be the subject of a lot of conflict and a lot of wars. So how is that going to play out when we're kind of using even more of them? We might be winning on in terms of leaving fossil fuels in the ground, but we might be losing in terms of um, China colonizing everywhere and people and sort of and some of the Middle Eastern countries fighting over it, and most of Africa in turmoil over just this issue. So how are we going to cope with that?
It's a very good question, and it's very real. There is blood money being made in Africa, and the problem is perhaps less about what's possible and more about how much rampant corruption there is in our own governments, in our corporations, and in the governments running these countries and exploiting their populations. Remember, the slave trade used to be run by tribal chiefs. The British used to just show up at the ports and buy slaves from traders who had been collected from inland. So there's all sorts of terrible things going on, and those things only get corrected as you bring in more and more people who are interested to behave ethically, and as we innovate. So it's possible to, for instance, normally electric cars rely on copper, which has to be mined, but also on these rare earth magnets. But a university in Newcastle, I think, have developed an electric motor that doesn't use magnets. It uses electricity. It uses electromagnets. It uses its own magnets, makes its own magnetism. And solar, and by far the biggest amount of any rare mineral that's being used is in the lithium ion batteries, the lithium extraction. And we now have the biggest battery maker in the world, CATL, C-A-T-L, Chinese company, have developed a sodium ion battery. And sodium you can get from the sea, salt, from electrolysis. So suddenly you are replacing a mineral that is rare-ish and not very concentrated. The lithium has to be extracted from, have quite a lot of material. You're replacing it with something that's common and cheap and non-polluting in the extraction and easily recycled. Mm-hmm. So we are getting better and better at these things. It's not, and I have a book somewhere called, on minerals by a man who is on the news, Sky News, Ed Conway, great book. And it's about the way our world is powered using minerals, material world, all the things that we extract from the planet. And these are enormously complicated problems, but they are all of the problems of extraction are best solved when we do it efficiently and we recycle. And when we do it ethically, when people are paid fair amounts, and when we don't do it wastefully, when you're not flushing toxic minerals into watercourses and so on. And we have answers to all of these. And funnily enough, the best answers to all of these come because all of these processes require energy. And the more renewable energy that you have, the more you can afford to pay to conduct your industry in a sensitive and non-wasteful way, not taking shortcuts. So there should be a cycle, a virtuous cycle of and of course communities can specify we will only use minerals, we will only use solar panels that have been ethically sourced, we will only use batteries using materials that are ethically sourced. Whereas if you are relying on big energy companies to balance the grid, then they will be saying, well, we'll just buy huge batteries from whoever's selling them cheapest. So communities, the more that communities get involved in creating their own energy and then making sure that the materials that are used to do things for communities are ethically sourced, then the cleaner the planet we get.
Mm. But a little question, a little rider on that is, how do you actually persuade people to be ethical when there seem to be so many forces persuading people not to be? People undercutting each other, people protecting their ways, protecting oil reserves or rare earths or whatever. People don't necessarily willingly change if they see their interests being threatened. And some of the people whose interests will be threatened will be quite powerful. And we see them wielding their power in quite disgusting ways at the moment. So how would we get round that sort of in order to get to the more ethical future?
I've no idea.
Right.
Actually, I've got lots of ideas, but whatever I say isn't going to convince anybody or everybody. So what I'm doing is focusing on trying to create fair energy for local people and empowered local communities. And the more people who do ethical things in their own lives, the less we need to scream that other people are being unethical and doing things wrong. It's acting within one's sphere of influence.
I agree.
Rather than looking over there and saying, you're bad, you're wrong, I'm virtuous. I'm the good person. You think, oh, how virtuous are you? Where are you getting your food? Does your food arrive on a lorry?
I hear you.
Yeah.
Just to give an example, I mean, I'm from a family that owns a paper mill, and paper mills use an inordinate amount of water, and it's always come from the beck. And the beck flows off the mountains in the Lake District, goes through the mill, and they've had a hell of a job over the years, over the decades, to clean up the water before it's returned to the beck. It's been a constant sore in the local community's eyes, and now they are the guy, well, my cousin's son, is in charge. And before he became in charge, but whilst his dad was running the business, he set up his own hydroelectric. And of course, hydroelectric's ideal because the beck supplies the hydroelectric. And so in this way, he's generating a good amount of electricity and also can do the water supply and cleansing in a different way and more efficiently. And I really am very proud of what he's doing to,
Brilliant.
clean up the company, really. And it wasn't their fault that it was not clean. It was just the mechanism of the business. And that is very much being more acted upon now.
Yeah, we're having new generations of people coming into businesses, and the better communication that we have in the world is people want to be seen to be doing the right thing as well as generally wanting to do the right thing. It helps if it can be made easier, and innovation can often do that. But I think I know the company that you're talking about. Are they in Kendal or near Kendal?
It's at Burneside next to Kendal, Cropper.
Yeah. And I've heard heard talks in Cumbria about, improvements that the factory have made, which they're proud of, because their employees are living in the community, and they want to be able to hold their heads up at church and say, the company I work for isn't polluting, which is great. So yeah, I mean that's applies more and more everywhere. The more that this is about communities becoming more empowered, getting away from a sense of not having agency to, we can generate all our own power. And once you generate all your energy, it's the primary constituent of, this is what's humanity has advanced through energy revolutions.
Yes. We're just coming up to 12 o'clock, David. We got another minute if somebody wants to say something.
Well, good timing then. Thank you
Yes.
all.
Yes, it's been
very, very, very interesting and thought-provoking.
Yes.
So the one thing I was, when we were talking to the minister, we just said, your roadmap is saying you want enough solar energy to power 10 million homes. What if we put it on the 10 million homes? And the idea is we would maybe in the southwest have a centre of excellence in this, and we want to start off doing a pilot on 100 homes in Bristol and a couple of 300 homes in Lancashire in the next year, and then see how that works and see how the idea spreads.
Very exciting. It really sounds wonderful, actually. It feels like, we're coming to some kind of, not exactly conclusion, but some sort of pulling together of a lot of things that you've been creating, you and other people have been creating for a long time.
We've talked a lot, and lots of people have done lots of things, and so things move forward, and then suddenly things become possible. There was a moment when telephones became portable and movable and had screens on, and it required some technologies to come together, touchscreen technology, and for phone signals to be on radio, and to be able to put a whole computer inside something as small as a music player. And Apple used a computer that's actually an evolution of the chip in the BBC Micro is still in the iPhone that I'm using right now. So when those things came together, all that stuff was able to go in a box. And we're saying, well, the solar panels and smart software at the energy company and cheap batteries joined up in a particular way suddenly makes it possible, and innovation from Mary Gilly and Energy Local makes it possible for us to put solar on a lot of roofs and share it. And look, the price is so low that would cut the cost of energy by at least a third. People would save money, and some of that money will go to our community centres to help them support the people. So you won't have to look for, some company put solar on my roof and they went bankrupt. No, I got this through my local community centre and I know where that is. And if anything goes wrong, well, I'll go and talk to them. But actually, I'm a member of the co-op. I can go to the AGM and, stand up and rant.
It's brilliant. It sounds brilliant, David. It really does. I just need to say, next week, David Mowat is going to be he's going to be talking about making Gaza families fund. I'm sorry, I'm doing this very badly. Making a Gaza families fund sustainable, which I'm sure he'll explain. And so I'll complete the recording now, shall I then, and send it to you as usual.
Yeah, send it to me as usual, and I will pick it up on my
I'll probably read it
replace the
again.
computer.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. Okay.
Really hope people listen to this, David. I hope
Yeah.
other Quakers do, because we are such a small group here, and
Yeah.
it's such an important message. I
Well,
really
Yeah.
feel that I think it should be, individually put in the put in the newsletter as, listen to this, folks. Anyway, there we go. That's
let's
my
hope the ideas get supported by the mayor and the minister,
yes.
and we move to a pilot, and people get to come to community centres and hear about it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
You've
Yeah.
done such
Thank
such an amazing amount. I mean, all that work, all those projects, all those meetings, all those
Absolutely, yes.
brilliant ideas. I mean, it just
Yes.
sounds really, really hopeful. And
We,
we need a bit of hope at the moment, as you can see. I'm, a bit of a ground down cynic. But
we'll have
Oh,
to we must make sure that this, I really agree with Hattie. We must make sure that this gets out there to other friends.
And I'm a member of SUSWAT. I think I'd like to, when it is ready, and if anybody agrees, to put the link on the SUSWAT email. We
Yeah.
don't send many emails out, and people might well link up with it, because we earlier on this month we had an open day at the village hall about called Warmer Westbury. So that was the idea about warming up your house.
Yeah. And we've got a project going in Lancashire, and my buddy up there is not into renewable energy. And he said, well, how are we going to get people? I said, look, you're used to running election campaigns. You put flyers through people's door that say, we got a candidate here. He thinks this is important. Come to a husting, find out more. Just needs a half an A4 invite to a talk. We'll tell people about it. They'll sign up. That's what it will be like when we get moving, I think.
Yeah.
Anyway, thank you very much. Thank you, Marion, for your encouraging words about your feeling encouraged.
yeah,
Yeah, me
And
too.
the New
I
York
do.
mayor, he used the technique of talking and talking.
Yeah.
Yes. It's really been a very encouraging morning altogether. So thanks very much, David. I'm really grateful. Okay.
Okay.
yeah.
Bless us all.
Okay.
Okay.
Bye, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.